Welcome to That's What She Said. I'm really excited today about our guests, and
it's a big day.
It's a big day. It's a big day around here. I'm Carrie Rosso, my co-host.
I'm Jeanette Jerzyk.
And why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves,
Please.
Julia?
Me first. Sure. I'm Julia Rietz. I'm the state's attorney here in Champaign County. Am I supposed to?
Yeah, are you married? Do you have kids, dogs?
Okay, I'm married. My husband, Al Johnston, is a retired Urbana police officer. We have two girls between us, Alice, who's 20, and Rachel, who's 16. We have about 6 horses, 3 dogs now. We just lost one, so I want to say 4 dogs, but we have 3. We live out in rural Sydney, and happy to be here. I'm going to pass on to my friend.
Sure. And I'm the mayor in the city of Champaign, and I have 2 kids, girls 14 and 9, and a husband as well. He works at State Farm in Bloomington, so he does the commute. We have 2 dogs, and like Julia, share a love of horses. I don't have any, but my dad does, and we try to ride, and the girls try to ride.
Now, did you both grow up in this area, or did you relocate to Champaign at some point?
I've been here since I was like 4, but Julia's.
Yeah, I came here for law school, and never in a million years would have thought I would have stayed, but I got a job in the state's attorney's office and ended up staying. I'm glad. It was a great decision. It certainly wasn't what my plan was. I grew up in the Chicago suburbs, and like I said, came here for law school.
And I left for college and law school and came back. Okay. I had to be away long enough to know that I really loved it here.
I think that's a common story. You hear, so many people, we came on the 2-year plan and it's been 22 years. And I think once you're here, I was talking about you guys totally behind your backs the other day, and with Deb Stump from Rietz. And
one of my favorite people.
I adore her, but she was saying, how much you love Champaign. Mm-hmm. And you think that's a common story. Once people get here and you start raising kids, or you find a job that you love, and you think, oh my gosh, 22 years passed, and I'm
and the thing that was hard for me when I was younger was that everywhere you went, you knew somebody, and the thing that I love now as an adult is everywhere you go, you know somebody. So you just have to be in the right phase of your life, I guess.
Yes, that's true. Well, that's one of the things that I find so fascinating about the two of you is your friendship. So you have a lot in common. You're both in the public eye. You both live this life of service.
People think we're each other all the time.
Oh my gosh.
I get called as Julia all the time.
And I was at a restaurant sitting there eating, and the man next to me said, "Aren't you my mayor?" And I said, "No,
Mayor's Feinen. How are you?
Okay.
You should have just gone with it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Offer your autograph or no?
Yeah. Well, and I love that. One of the things that I love is that you're in different parties, and that you're such good friends, and that you've been friends and maintained this friendship over the years. And I think right now, especially, we're in some turbulent times, and in the environment of you're with us or you're against us, and there's so much that can divide us, that in times like that you guys maintain this beautiful friendship, and you sort of are this great role model team for the rest of us.
We work together, and so just we are lucky enough to like each other outside of the work environment. But you have to be able to work with the people that are there. And so, you got to get past the party stuff and get the work done. And ultimately, that's what's important.
But you were friends first, right?
Yes, so we've known each other since, I started in the state's attorney's office in 1993 right out of law school. And Deb
I was dating someone in the state's attorney's office, right out of law school.
Yeah, so Deb's boyfriend at that time was the attorney, was my partner basically. He was one step above me, and so we got to know each other in that way as just young lawyers in town. Deb was at my first wedding.
I was, it was beautiful.
Julia was beautiful. You thought it was beautiful. Because behind the scenes, it was crazy town.
It was beautiful. It was like a Fair Look wedding where she came down these steps in a gown. It was awesome.
So what's funny is that I was telling Carrie before the story about those steps, which you probably don't even know about, but this was
in 1993, so it was before cell phones, and my photographer was running late before the wedding started. And I did not want, first of all, to see my soon-to-be husband, and I also didn't want the bridesmaids and groomsmen to be photographed together. So the guy gets there late, and they're all downstairs in the beautiful garden area. And I see out the window that he's got them set up taking pictures with the bridesmaids and groomsmen. So I go running down this gorgeous staircase that you just described, in my dress, hair, everything, my father down at the end of the staircase, cursing my head off at the photographer. Get him Blake. No, I didn't hear that. No, only my father knows that story, experienced the joy of his his daughter coming down.
Very beautiful. It really rewrites that fairy book moment.
It does, doesn't it? So now it looks different for you than it did once everything was settled down.
Right.
And
Yeah, it was gorgeous.
yeah, so I always try to help people in their weddings to not brides. You just worry about these things. Everyone else will take care of those.
Yes.
And then I married somebody else, so didn't marry the guy that I was dating when I met Julia.
So fast forward, 10, 20, 15, 12 years. I mean, you're still friends. You work on opposite party lines, so to speak. And what are some of the challenges that you guys face in your everyday lives, your friendship?
Well, I think one of the things that's nice about being mayor is we're nonpartisan. Mm-hmm. So I have the Republican label. I was a county board member, and so I was elected as a Republican. So I don't try to hide from that in any way. But I do think it's really important at the city of Champaign that we're nonpartisan. The way that we get work done is so dramatically different than my experience was on the county board because we are nonpartisan and we're looking at issues and not at party politics. So I think I'm a little bit freer perhaps than Julia may be, although the state's attorney's office isn't a particularly I mean, you have to make decisions and use your discretion in a way that is fair regardless of party too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a partisan office, it's an elected office, but what we do on a day-to-day basis isn't necessarily one party or the other. So I think, between the two of us, the party issue really isn't one and never has been. I mean, we share a lot of ideas and opinions. Sometimes Deb is even more liberal on some things than I am.
She's trying to make sure I never get reelected.
There's a safe one.
Within any group, a family, you're going to have a wide variety of opinions. We all have that crazy uncle or that cousin that we might not necessarily agree with.
Got one of those.
Yep.
But what you consider yourself politically, it doesn't mean that you can't be friends or agree with or respect somebody who's on the other side of the aisle or whatever.
And I would say county board in some ways was good training for that, as partisan as it can be. With 27 members, about half and half from each party, if you wanted to get work done, you had to figure out how to work with everybody. And you couldn't just say, well, I'm only going to talk to the Republicans over here. And so you learn that in a small community, if you're really concerned about the work that has to happen, you've just got to make your alliances where you can and get the work done.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I also think that Champaign County, Champaign-Urbana, the people are a lot more open-minded, willing to look at the person and the work as opposed to just what letter is after your name in the ballot.
Because like you were saying, we see each other in the grocery at a baseball game, a basketball game, and I think when you're held accountable, sometimes you get keyboard courage, or when you're I've got an angry type at you. Never read the comments, but when it's someone that you have a personal experience with, which is why I think it's important to have people in your life that have different opinions and feel differently. And odds are you probably, when you're together, don't even talk about the political stuff. But when it comes down to it, if there's somebody in your life that you love who you disagree with, then you can't. It makes it so much more difficult to
Right.
angry type, or because you're thinking of that person you love that feels that way.
But doesn't that make life more interesting to have that dinner conversation with your spouse or your friend and to engage in lively conversation, to have different opinions, and to maybe even learn something? My husband enlightens me all the time with the way he sees the world. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever been enlightened, but I accept that, I will never change my mind, and you'll probably never change your mind, but we can respect each other and at least have that knowledge of, okay, I could not disagree with you more right now, which is what was great. Like my co-founder, we would often go head to head, and we would say to each other, I love you, but I've never heard a more jacked up statement in my life. But when you've got someone like that, it keeps you in check, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, and certainly you can disagree with somebody else, and that doesn't mean you don't respect them or like them as a human being. And you can agree with that person, and that doesn't mean you're any less of a Democrat or a Republican.
Right.
Because I might agree with Deb on some things doesn't mean I'm not a Democrat at heart any, more than her.
Agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, there are so many things we are working together on as a community, and the violence issue is such a huge one, and Julia is at the forefront of that every day. And so for us to just, pick up our toys and go home because we're different parties and not spend the time working on those issues isn't fair to the community at all. And, everybody's going to disagree about the exact way that we need to get things done. And sometimes that's party politics, and sometimes it's just life.
Is that,
that's okay.
would you say that is part of the big picture? Do you feel like you really have the same end goal in mind?
I think so,
anyone
yes.
in a official capacity, you're trying to work towards the better good of the community or hopefully the country.
And I
it's just-
find that at city council, I feel like we can respectfully disagree about what the path is to get to our goals. I think in general we have very similar goals amongst council members. And it's okay if you don't think the path I think we ought to take is the right way, because everybody's sort of pure at heart and they're trying to do what's best. It's when it becomes party-centered in a way that isn't moving the ball forward that it becomes really hard to deal with.
And I think it makes a huge impression on voters. When I see people across party lines, I always sort of give them because I have a secret list. But, I give them points. Yeah, I'm going into my list. I'm the angry type. But it makes me, I think, even when it's somebody not in the party that I typically support, I think, wow, you get points because you're working together.
I want to know. I have a question.
Uh-oh. Scary. When you start something with, I want to know.
I want to know if there's a moment that you can remember, or the story behind that moment where you identified with one particular party and or where you knew that you wanted to be state's attorney or to be mayor and to follow that path. Was there an event, a story, an enlightening?
Well, I'm guessing that my path to being a Democrat is pretty similar to your path to being a Republican in the sense of, but different paths. I'm a Jewish girl from Chicago, so I'm a Democrat. My family's always been Democrats. From age old, we're Democrats, and so I've always associated myself with the Democratic Party on a family level. And then when I didn't really get involved in politics until after I left the state's attorney's office, and I was unhappy with the state's attorney at that time. We had a lot of disagreements, and so I got involved in politics, quite frankly, to work for the guy who was running against him. And then I met many people in the local Democratic Party and learned from them, and that's really where my political involvement began. But I think it wasn't really a shock to me to lean towards the Democrats because, again, it's just how I grew up.
And I grew up in a family that was incredibly involved in politics. My dad is was Congressman Johnson's law partner. I grew up with, my mom ran his very first campaign for state rep, and back in the days before computers. And I mean, I remember the printouts of the voter sheets with like the printer with the holes on the side because they're running through the spooler. And, we were doing everything by hand, and like however old I was, second grade, I'm hand addressing envelopes for, things because there was no computer labels. Or later there were labels, but, you had to hand stick them on every envelope. And so I just, again, kind of grew up with it, and I think didn't question it much. When I went to college, my dad kept saying to me, "You're going to become a liberal Democrat. You have to go through that change, and then you'll come back to the Republican Party, but you got to kind of grow, and it never really happened. I mean, Julia would joke that I probably already am a liberal Democrat. I don't know. But I've, been able to be centrist and find my space within the party. I think it's a broad tent, and you don't have to agree with everything on either end, and from jobs creation, economic development kinds of things, that's the party where I find that I fit. And you just keep working, and I have been since I was a little kid.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I fit in the government being there to help people and give them opportunities, but also people having responsibility to to help themselves and to be active and involved. So,
which is probably the same thing I would say. So somewhere in there's we always used to laugh that you have to create a party that's sort of this middle party where all of us who are both on the ends could fit, and that's probably where we are.
What would you call that party?
I don't know. Do you have a name?
That's what she said.
Yeah, we're starting a she said party.
Yes.
Gary for president.
Big announcements
I would
today.
vote for that.
Big
Absolutely.
announcements.
Well, you are both very, very busy ladies, so we really thank you for taking some time out of your day today to share with our friends and with us. What's the your lives are like serving in office and your friendship through the years. So thank you, and we thank you for all the hard work that you do for our community. Right, Gary?
Yes. Well, I was telling them off camera that I think that I'm so grateful that they live a life of service, and I think they both would say, "Oh, no, not me. It's other people," and name other people, but they do, and we're very grateful to you guys. So thanks for being here, and until next time, that's what she said.
That's what she said.
Thank you to the Virginia Theater for letting us film here today, and to Texture Home for making everything pretty. And thank you to Columbia Street Roastery for the coffee.